All right, welcome along to the RTÉ Soccer Podcast. I'm Raf Diallo alongside James O'Toole this week, and we're also joined by former UCD and Shamrock Rovers midfielder Paul Corry. Now, there's going to be a bit of a European flavour this week. First off, obviously, the Women's European Championships are well underway. Every team now has played once and played their first group games. So we're going to react to the sort of first half week of action. And then also League of Ireland clubs are playing their opening rounds of action in their various European competitions. Shamrock Rovers in the Champions League and Sligo Rovers and Derry City in the Europa Conference League. First legs done last week and then playing second legs this week. So we'll be discussing that as well as domestic matters for the teams not involved. So as said, the Women's Euros, we have all the games live on RTÉ television and also on the RTÉ Player. Just check the TV listings for whichever games you do want to watch. And James, I suppose to start off, this was a tournament that was billed as, 6 or 7 teams having a realistic chance of winning. From what you've seen of the game so far, has your mind changed on any of them?
Not really, to tell you the truth. I think there's a massive gap between certain teams in the tournament, as we've seen already with the results we've had, even yesterday's results with France and Italy. That game, most games, people would have thought that would have been a much closer game than it actually was. It's like when you look at the qualifying, you go back to the qualifying, there's only 3 teams in the entire qualifying that won every game. And needless to say, it's the Dutch, the Germans and Norway who have started the way we expected them to start in this tournament as well. I think from a spectator's point of view, so far so good. I think it's been a rather good tournament. I think people in England, fair play to them, are getting behind it. They're getting into the stadiums. I know some stadiums have limited capacity and stuff like that, but so far it's been really, really good to watch. And it's great that we were able to see all these games on television for the first time for Euros, for us anyway, live here on RTÉ. It's been brilliant.
Yeah, and Paul, for yourself, who's impressed you most from any of the games you have seen?
Yeah, I guess what's front and center is France from last night. I just thought the means at which they go forward, they seem to be able to hurt you in so many different ways. It was a name that probably rings a bell with many Irish people, Cascarino, that stood out for me last night. I was half thinking, Jesus, could she be playing for us? But she was superb last night. And the French, they just looked lethal. I know they probably took the foot off the pedal in the second half, but they had, I guess, every right to do so, being 5-0 up at half time. And I guess given the fact that Lyon have been so dominant in the Champions League over recent years, they've got that know-how, they've got expertise in how to actually win competitions. That will probably lend itself to the French as they go further into the competition. But I know there's probably a bit of rumours off the pitch about what's going on with the French, as usual, when we get to these European competitions. So I'll be interested to see how that plays out. Outside of that, I thought Holland and Sweden was a superb game. Probably lends itself to the format of the European Championships. We're used to seeing the 4 groups of 4, and you get those real crunch games in the group stages. And I would imagine that if both of those teams can kind of produce performances like that, you would expect that both teams will go out of that group and potentially be a contender once they get to the latter end of the competition. But Medina for Holland was just superb. I know I watched a lot of her in the Olympics, and she was brilliant for that Dutch team, but her game seems to have come on again to another level. She's able to take it into feet, running behind. She's amazing feet for quite a big woman. And she was somebody who would definitely will keep the Dutch within games, even if they're not playing well. She's somebody who can kind of produce something out of nothing, and certainly looks like she's got goals to her game. So they were the 2 games. I think for me, France are definitely the standouts from that first round of games, and will be the ones to beat.
Yeah, Germany also very impressive in their opening win over Denmark, who were runners-up in 2017 as well. From a Northern Irish point of view, they're back in action tonight. They're playing Austria at 5 o'clock, so again, live on RTÉ television and the RTÉ Player, and then England-Norway also in that group, which is a huge game too. I suppose 2 of the supposed favourites meeting relatively early on. But from a Northern Irish point of view, James, I mean, Simone McGill with the ACL injury is obviously a blow for them, but as has been said, I think this tournament seems to have come a little bit too early for them. It's all about a learning experience.
Yeah, it's a learning experience, and it's just another one of those unfortunate things that seems to happen with Kenny Shiels and teams, where he thinks he's got his starting 11, I've got that sorted, and then we see an ACL. It kind of looked like an ACL at the time. Then, of course, a couple of hours later, it comes out that they're down a player, and it's something that they can't afford. Like, they're probably, I would suggest, the only part-time team in this tournament where nearly every single player also has a job outside of playing football. So for them to even get to the tournament was an absolute brilliant achievement for them. I think today they just need to go out and show what they're capable of, because I don't think they did quite well against Norway, who are a team who people will fancy to win it anyway. So against Austria today, just go out and express yourself and just go for it, because, as you said, they're a very young team as well, and experience all counts. No matter how much you play, once you get minutes under your belts in major tournaments, in major stadiums, surrounded by major fans, and the atmosphere around that, being in camp, and we've watched it on telly before, and it'll do nothing but help them. I just hope that they get out of the gates today. They obviously scored a goal, which I thought was a bit, the bookies the other day were being a bit disrespectful for them having odds on whether they'd score or not. It was very disrespectful to any team, but hopefully they get a good fun in the game. I think the England-Norway game is going to be a cracking game today. It should be a really good game. Really look forward to that.
Yeah, there's a few good games this week. There's Germany-Spain on Tuesday in Brentford as well, 8 o'clock. So definitely, I think anybody, if you're in front of your TV screens, try and catch a bit of that, because Germany, as Lisa Fallon and Richie Sadler pointed out on the coverage, they're pressing against Denmark, who are a really good team themselves. It's unbelievable. And I mean, they squeezed out Pernille Harder, who's, you know, one of the best players in the world, and like, she had no role whatsoever. And then obviously the Spanish later on, earlier on that same day as well, very, very impressive against a team that Ireland will be coming up against and have beaten as well, which is Finland. So let's listen to Anya O'Gorman, because obviously she was going to have a close eye on the Finns given the 1st of September and Tala.
I was watching closely, and obviously they're up against a tough side tonight, and it was a difficult game for them. But look, they have talent. They're good defensively, and they're organised, like we say. They play on the counter attack, so they are one to watch when they come to Tala.
What dangers did you see in them?
Yeah, look, like we said, Engelmann and getting forward them on the counter attack. They're very fast, and if a team has to open out and get at them, I think they can exploit them spaces. So looking forward to the game. Obviously, it's a really important game for us. Likewise, it is for them. So the pressure.
Are they a side you can take?
Sorry?
Are they a side you can take?
Oh, definitely. I definitely think we can take them on, and we're confident, and we've obviously a great belief in our squad that we can qualify for our first major tournament. So looking forward to it.
And hoping for a sellout night in Tala?
Yeah, definitely. I think the tickets are on sale the 24th of July, so
get them
might as well get that in while I'm here.
Good plug in.
Yeah, so look, we're hoping that it's a sellout in Tala, and obviously the crowd will get behind us, and that can make all the difference on the day.
Yeah, so she said 1st of September, obviously, when Ireland play Finland, and as we know, an Irish win and they qualify for the playoffs, which would be historic in and of itself. So tickets on sale obviously later this month. But Paul, I suppose with an Irish eye, obviously the way Spain dismissed Finland, I mean, obviously as James said, you can see sometimes the gaps between certain teams, but from an Irish point of view, you feel that if and when they do qualify for a tournament, they will acquit themselves quite well given what we've seen.
Yeah, absolutely. I think given the progress that we've seen, not only in performances, but also in results over the last 12, 18 months, will certainly give confidence to that group. And we're certainly gearing towards that qualification. That is the end goal for this core group of players. You can see the progress within kind of the players individually, but also as a collective and the performances that we've put together. It is very difficult to look at Finland, given the fact that they were playing such a top class outfit in Spain, to take too much from that result. But I think given the qualifying campaign that we've had, the results that we've had against the likes of Sweden, that's certainly going to lend confidence to the group. And like everybody keeps mentioning, we're talking about the ticket sales. I think every time I hear an interview about this Finland game, I hear about the ticket sales. I think that game will sell out, no problem. And we're all heading towards that game in September. And it's going to be huge. It really is going to be huge, because you see the hype that goes along with the European competition, like the one that we're seeing in the UK at the moment. If we can qualify for something of the equivalent, well, then the game is only going to grow. It's only going to keep getting better. We've seen the sponsors like Sky rally in behind the Irish women's team. I'm sure that will continue from other sources, and fingers crossed we can get there, because it's going to be huge, a huge kind of advantage to the women's game here.
Yeah, so as I said, this evening, 5 o'clock, Austria against Northern Ireland, and then England-Norway at 8 o'clock, which, as James said, is going to be an absolute cracker. And then, as we said, later in the week, Germany and Spain, which is on Tuesday in Brentford, which is, again, two of the best teams in the competition. Were very impressive. And then on Friday, Northern Ireland against England, which is in Southampton. So that, yeah, Friday at 8 o'clock, and definitely well worth a watch there. Now, also, we're sticking on the European theme, obviously, because of the League of Ireland clubs' involvement in the Champions League and Europa Conference League. As we saw last week live on RT2 and the RTÉ Player, Shamrock Rovers got a very good 3-0 win over Hibernians of Malta. And obviously the goals came from Ronan Finn, Dylan Watts, and then Rory Gaffney. Paul, I suppose from Rory Gaffney's point of view, it was pretty much quite an eventful game, mostly in a good way, and then obviously the one blemish which he actually got away with.
Yeah, I mean, to focus, I guess, on the positives first and foremost, his all-round performance was superb. I thought he led the line really well, and he's been doing that in recent weeks. He's certainly a handful. He's a big man. He kind of leads the line for Shamrock Rovers and kind of does the unselfish work of the front man, whereas he kind of creates a space for those in behind him. But the ball in for Ronan Finn's goal, the ball in for Dylan Watts' goal, really intelligent play, great execution. And just, in the absence of Jack Byrne and Graham Burke, he really stood up and he produced on the night. Now, he's absolutely got away with one later on in the game. I have absolutely no doubt he knew what he was doing. I know he's come out and he said that it was an accident. I think it was just maybe a heat of the moment. He's lost his head, and they were really lucky because he should have been sent off in that moment, and then he's gone on probably 10 minutes later and he's finished off a really well worked move with a superb finish. The little dummy before he actually started at home, just give himself that bit more time was excellent, and his all-round display was superb. He was just very lucky that he got away with the red card, and he would be missing, you would imagine, the next leg and potentially the leg after that had he been sent off.
Yeah. And sorry, just as you said, he claimed it was more accidental, so let's maybe just listen to the audio of him first before we continue.
I definitely caught him, but I didn't mean to catch him. I tried to get him off me, but I didn't think I was obviously I think I caught him in the chin or something, but it was accidental.
Just a word on the balance of the tie now. It's a very strong lead to take into the second leg in light of the heat and the humidity that you'll face in Malta next week. Yeah, we were in Bratislava last year in Albania and it was very warm, so thankfully we've a 3-0 lead to take us with it this time. And just a word again on the crowd, in excess of 7,000, and they played a massive role. Yeah, it's amazing. Honestly, it's unbelievable to be playing in this stadium in front of, I suppose, crowds like this on nights like this.
So yeah, Rory Gaffney there, obviously he didn't flinch as he with his description of that moment at all.
That's obviously the media training he got over in Salford when he was there. Because, if you're going to get somebody off with your feet, you're always kind of putting yourself in trouble. But he got away with one. But I think on the night, Shamrock Rovers were very good, particularly in that first half. We don't see many Irish teams control the ball the way they did and control the tempo of the game. Gary O'Neill, Chris McCann, Dylan Watts were excellent in the middle of the pitch. And they did enough, while they were on top, they scored goals. And that's vitally important in Europe. And they were obviously down a number of bodies, so to be able to come through the tie 3-0 puts them in a really good shape now for the second leg. But I wouldn't expect them, Raf, to probably come out of their shell too much in the second leg. There were times in that second half where they looked a bit too open for me. I think if it was a stronger opposition, they would have been pegged back. If you think about that chance where the winger's gone in through one-on-one, he should have buried it, hit the post. 2-1's a completely different tie. They could be facing a bit of trouble going into the second leg, so they probably got away with one. I think Stephen Bradley be happy enough to just stay in their shape in the second leg, frustrate Hibernians and potentially look to hit them on the counter-attack. And if they are to get through, I think they travel again this weekend out to Bulgaria to play Ludogorets. So it's about managing bodies, about managing kind of the energy, managing the legs, and hopefully keeping everybody fresh for what would be a massive second leg.
Yeah, the away leg tomorrow night, and it's on the RTÉ News channel, so that's live from 6:55 p.m. if you can log in and watch that one as well. James, I suppose, as Paul said, it was a very controlled performance, and we'll talk about Derry City and Sligo Rovers a little bit later on, but it was sort of in a Champions League first round at home where we know the second leg there's going to be issues with heat. It's exactly the sort of gap and scoreline that you need.
Yeah, I think it was a case of what everybody's been crying out to see Shamrock Rovers do over the last couple of years in Europe. Control the game at home. When you're on top, get your goals, and then sit back and take on a bit of pressure. But as Paul was saying, like, they're missing many players. I have to say, Justin Ferizaj, I think maybe I pronounced his name wrong, but when I saw that young lad come on, his mentality on the ball, his composure on the ball. Like, if someone told you before that he was 17 years of age, you wouldn't have believed them when you seen him come on the pitch. He was excellent. So they got to get some young people European exposure as well, which is wonderful for them. And it goes to show that if you've got a proper academy working, this can work for you. But I think they controlled it well. Stuff they haven't done in Europe over the last couple of years, and we've been let down by them a bit in Europe over the last couple of years with the way they played. But last Tuesday night was a great example of how they can control a game in Tallaght on a brilliant pitch. Rory Gaffney, to me, is and has always been a quality player. His size, his physique, his ability to get on the ball, and the balls into the box, as Paul mentioned. Like, if anybody's getting that kind of supply into the box, you're going to score goals. And even the Ronan Finn one, just the fact that the left full switches off for a second, Ronan's in, scores a goal, 1-up, out you go, just keep on building and building and building. I say they're happy that we've had the weather we've had over the last couple of days, because I'm sure they've been training in this weather just to even get up to an intensity of what the heat can be like. But fully expect them to win away again, which would be great. I think that'll probably be the first Champions League home and away win I think I can remember in ages, maybe for an Ireland team, and get in there. And then, as Paul said, Ludogorets, if you get on to Ludogorets, have quality in the Champions League, have been in the Champions League group stages. So there'd be no easy task. They'd be very, very difficult. But I'm sure Steve Bradley and his backroom staff will do their homework on them. They look forward to it. And I think if they get one more win, they drop. If they lose them, they drop into the group stages of the Europa. So there's a load of different ways they can go now. But it's a great positive start for the Irish teams in Europe last Tuesday.
Yeah, let's talk about Ferizaj, actually, Justin Ferizaj, to give him his full name. And also, I'm not sure if my pronunciation is any better than yours. But, obviously, look, as you said, the importance of the academy. And we'll talk about Danny Mandroiu, obviously, leaving for Lincoln City as well, because you're always looking, there's always going to be a bit of a revolving door at certain levels, and the next in the production line is what you're looking for. Obviously, people will more likely have seen him playing for the Ireland youth teams. Obviously, his first team experience is very, very limited. It was only his second appearance for the Shamrock Rovers first team last Tuesday. He was on trial at Hamburg, I believe, for a week or so earlier in the year, but he's also turned down Sampdoria, Paul. I mean, which would have, we've seen a lot of young Irish players going over to Italy, but he's looking like he's going to sign a contract with Shamrock Rovers, which is obviously going to be a huge boost for them.
Yeah, I mean, that is now the pathway that is being created for these younger players. Justin's somebody who I would have seen a lot of. I coached down at that age group with Belvedere, and Justin was at home for him, and then he moved on to St. Kevin's, same team as Kevin Zeffy, and you could always see that he had kind of the components in his game to go and progress, and he has done so. But I think the freedom with what he has played, particularly in that Champions League game, is something that's kind of taken people back. There's a fearlessness about him. There was one ball that he took on the half turn, and it's just kind of those little glimpses that you see and you think, wow, there's a real player in there. And then he's nutmegged Hibernians player, and he's got then the power to push through. So his performances were excellent, but I think we're starting to see maybe some of the fruits of the national leagues coming in, and the fact that there's, a system and a foundation there for younger players to actually work themselves through. And Justin's gone from the 15s to the 17s through to the 19s, and then training with the first team. That never existed before, Raf. Like, Justin would have gone at 15, at 16, and you wouldn't have heard about him until he potentially came to a first team. Whereas now we're starting to become more familiar with these emerging talents that we have. And I guess, for Justin, if he can continue to progress, I'm sure that they'll put him on a professional contract with the view of them potentially selling him on later on down the line for a much higher fee than what they would have got at 15 or 16. But it's great that he's got his opportunity. Shamrock Rovers is a difficult place to get in. I don't believe he would have got that opportunity unless the injuries had actually been about. But he has to take his opportunity, and he did that with both hands. And he's somebody now that if you had an injury in the middle of the pitch, you wouldn't be afraid of throwing him in there, because he's proved over the last 2 games that he's played that he's more than capable of stepping up. But he's somebody that if he continues to progress, you would expect to then move on, the likes of Anabankwa, Burns, further down the line. But Shamrock Rovers have recruited really well, and they're starting to bring those players through.
Yeah, and as we said, I suppose it tempers in the longer term, obviously not in the short term because he's only 17, but Danny Mandroiu going over to Lincoln City, the club obviously in League One that were linked with Stephen Bradley, or even more than linked, and he did talk to them and eventually decided to stick with Shamrock Rovers. But in terms of Danny Mandroiu and expectations for him now, and Lincoln maybe as a stepping stone, no disrespect to them obviously as a club, but where he can take his game, James, like how do you view that move for him and the potential trajectory that awaits him?
Yeah, I think there will be like I don't get people in Ireland in particular don't see League One as a step up, and I don't get that. Paul will tell you now, when you're in Championship League One, it is a step up to what we're playing here. There's no question, and the likes of that kind of step will only progress Danny on more. And he'd probably put him in the window of maybe getting an international call up somewhere along the line. He's obviously when he signed his contract with Shamrock Rovers, his idea was, I'm using Shamrock Rovers as a stepping stone, or else there wouldn't be such a low buyout from his contract. He was obviously very assured of his own ability and very assured that someone will come looking for him. But it's one of the odd ones actually when you look at moves recently, because we've only had Darragh Burns going to MK, you got him going across to Lincoln, but a lot of our moves, and it's interesting to say that Justin was a Hamburg on loan, but a lot of our moves are going in that direction now into mainland Europe, where the football's different. The guys would be physically, the physicality of the game is a little bit more different than it would be in the UK. But I think Danny has the potential of being a really, really class player if he gets his head into it, stays injury free, and is willing to put the hard yards in and understand that, yes, I may not go into the first team straight away. Once you get that, I don't know about Paul. Paul's been there. Paul's been there, done that, got the t-shirt. It can be very difficult for a lad who is the number one player here and end up not being the number one player when they go across. I think that's the mental part of it, where you have to get that sorted first. And I think if he gets that sorted, shows what he's about in training, in pre-season and stuff like that, he could well flourish within that setup.
Yeah, and I suppose having had the experience of being across there before, I think it was at Brighton as well, which sometimes can help if you've had that behind you as well.
Yeah, it can. But again, that's the mentality part of it. There's several players who come back and gone and come back again. He needs to grab it by both hands now and just really run with it.
Yeah, and Paul, just on that move as well, what's your kind of view on it in terms of both, I suppose, from how it impacts Shamrock Rovers in the short to medium term, and then also for Mandroiu himself in terms of where he's taking his career?
Yeah, I mean, Shamrock Rovers' hands were tied with regards to that clause that they had in the contract. They had to let him go. It does leave a bit of a void, but I think if there was one position within the Shamrock Rovers team that they were maybe a little top heavy, and it was definitely that kind of 10 central midfielder position. They seem to have an abundance of talent that can slot in there. I think for Danny, I think James is right. Nobody will ever question his talent. He's got quite a unique sense of, or style of play, where he's able to travel with the ball very quickly. He's got goals in his game that he showed particularly last season, and a creativity. So it is about knuckling down. It is about kind of hanging in there when things are tough. I've played in League One. The league might have changed slightly, but it's extremely physical. There's 46 games a year. That's not including the cup competitions that go on with, not the Johnson's Playing Trophy. I can't think what they've renamed it, but they seem to rename it every year. And
the V-Vans.
yeah. But it's difficult. It really is. Now, he's got a good landing ground. I think your first move over is very important. And I think Darragh Burns and Danny Mandroiu probably have good, what I call landing grounds, where you can get in, you can afford to maybe make a couple of mistakes, but actually still be in contention of playing within a first team, where he might not get that sort of allowance within a championship team. It'd be an interesting one to see how it pans out. I think both Burns and Mandroiu, I think, will be successful in those moves. I think they've just found a good club where You know, the sort of ethos of those clubs is about getting the ball down and kind of playing an expansive game, and I think that lends itself well to both of those individuals. So listen, fingers crossed, they've both got the talent. It's about knuckling down now. It is a tough league. There are going to be times when they're out of the side, but it's just about being mentally strong, and fingers crossed it goes well for them.
I think from Danny's point of view, I don't know about you, Paul, I think it helps he's gone in at a time where they've just changed manager, and the manager happens to be a former Irish winger who kind of played in a similar kind of style to what you see Danny play. So and would that have helped them?
Yeah, I think so. And I also think the timing of the year, signing and getting a full pre-season under your belt is very important, because you get minutes on the pitch to actually show what it is that you can do. The lads will obviously be coming across fresh, having played the guts of half a season here, so that will benefit them. And you're just hoping, you're hoping that somebody like a Luke McNally is an example of what it is that can be done. You know, goes over, probably not a move that people think is exceptional or, you know, lavish, going across to Oxford. Oxford are a superb club, a really, really superb club of bringing players through. MK Dons are the exact same. And you're hoping that if they have a good 12, 18 months, well, then they get themselves that bigger move into the championship. And if you ask me, that's our best route for our younger players, to go into the likes of a Preston you see with Andy and Darragh Horgan. It's difficult to get in there. Graham Burke is another example. Even myself, when I went to Sheffield Wednesday, got in for a couple of games. It's hard to stay in at those clubs. There's so much on the line when you're playing in the championship. Going into League One is a much better route, and then hoping to make a move then into a championship team and become maybe a more fundamental part of one of those squads.
Yeah, we'll see how they get on, but hopefully, obviously, even for their international credentials, League One, a great pathway first to start off, as you said. And I think the name of that trophy, it's the Papa John's trophy now. I can never say it with a straight face. I remember when Rotherham United won it, and obviously we had a few Irish lads playing it as well. But yeah.
Of course it's the Papa John's.
Yeah, the Papa John's.
I'd say Domino's are raging.
Yeah, but anyway, moving on from the pizza derbies, it's Sligo Rovers in the Europa Conference League. So in terms of winning games as well, they went away to Wales, beat Bala Town 2-1, went down to an early goal, Lassana Mendes scoring in the 6th minute, but then it seemed to be all Sligo Rovers in terms of the key moments up until pretty much late on. Aidan Keena, great classy goal, and just midway through the first half, and then Max Mata just after halftime, opportunistic finish, and then Nando Pineacker getting sent off with 10 minutes to go. So, Paul, in terms of this game, impressive enough from Sligo Rovers, I suppose, more so in terms of the concession of the early goal, because that can knock a team.
Yeah, I think that's the main point from it, that that they went behind and they were able to bounce back. It was a bit of a slippery one for Sligo Rovers, because everybody was expecting that they would go there and they would win. And I know Bala Town are maybe not a massive name, but it's still a tricky tie any time you go away from home in Europe. But the Keena goal was sensational. Like the control first and foremost to take it away from the defender, and then the composure to just lob it over the keeper. Sometimes you need that in Europe. You just need some of your bigger players to step up and to produce a moment of quality. And I'm sure that helped relax everybody around them and just settle into the tie. And then they've obviously got the second goal from a set piece, slightly scrappy, but you take it. And you would imagine coming back to the showgrounds, being ahead, you would like to think that they would have enough then to see themselves through. Sending offs and stuff can really hamper sides, and you would just hope that they keep 11 players on the pitch this time round. And that they just show an element of control similar to that of Shamrock Rovers last week. And if they do that, I'm sure that they'll have no issues with getting through that tie, and Motherwell awaits. So, that could be a massive, massive chance for Sligo Rovers. I think for Irish sides going up against UK teams in Europe probably gives themselves a bit of a better chance, because it's maybe similar to the football that we play week in, week out here. So that is huge for Sligo. And Keena signing a new contract is also massive news, because he's been pivotal to much of what they've done this year, particularly with Johnny Kenny moving to Celtic last year. It was going to be a difficult job to replace him, but he's stepped in there, and hopefully he can foil him through into the next round. Yeah,
he's 11 league goals this season, and that goal against Bala Town being the 12th as well. James, in terms of the Bala Town manager name-checked Keena afterwards as being the difference, and obviously his class is shining through.
Yeah, it is. And we've heard about him for a little while, but the goal the other day is, again, like we spoke about composure for Ferizaj, but the composure for Keane, just to bring it back inside. Goalkeeper comes out. Goalkeeper kind of helps because the goalkeeper commits. So it's an easy enough. It's exactly as we saw Beth Mead's goal, I think, for England the other day. Like it was very similar to that. Just a little nick over the goalkeeper, and then it goes. It's a tough. That was a tough game for Sligo. In fairness, they were the unseeded team. They were lucky that the Bala would come out as the seeded team they had to play first off. So they got the rub of the green there in the draw, which we've said for years. Irish teams need a rub of the green. But we've seen Irish teams go to Wales before as favourites. We've seen Bows go over as favourites. We've seen Longford as favourites in the European tie against Carmarthen. I think it was Longford many, many years ago. And the only team to really put a Welsh team to the sword in all the times has been Derry against Aberystwyth a number of years ago. So it was good. It was a difficult tie for Sligo to go over for. It was good. The travel was quite short. Good win. Get them back here. I fully expect Sligo to go through into the next round. And I think is it Motherwell they may be up against in the next round. I think I'm not 100% sure where the draw is for that.
Yeah,
where they've come up in the draw, but if they get Motherwell again, like that's another good draw for them as well. Like Interfere Park, play against Motherwell, nice tight stadium, and anything can happen there. Like, do you know what I mean? But for John Russell and the lads, it's great to see them get a win in Europe, because Europe was almost the undoing of them last year as far as the league campaign was concerned. So getting a win there now, great atmosphere, great for the Sligo Rovers fans. They went over in their numbers, had what looks like done great tourism for the west of Ireland, it has to be said, with the reaction they got in Wales. So overall, a wonderful result for them. A tough tie, but they've come out on top of it, and that's all that matters.
Yeah, the other Europa Conference League game involving League of Ireland teams, Derry City losing 2-0 at home to Riga. Now, Graham Gartland had billed this one as arguably the hardest of the ties that the three Irish teams have had in this round, and that's how it sort of paved out in the sense of obviously Gabriel Ramos scoring in the first half, Alexander Filipov short 2 minutes after Matty Smith's red card. And it's the Matty Smith red card, Paul, like looking at the footage, I didn't really see much going on there. It seemed to be like two yellow cards, one for the Riga player and one for Matty Smith. And then, you know, when you see the red card coming out, it looked a little bit strange given the evidence that was in front of us. Yeah,
it was it was bizarre, and I'm sure, you know, there was a number of people kind of scratching their heads wondering about what went on. And to be honest with you, it wasn't just that moment. There was a couple of iffy decisions within that game that you were kind of looking at. There was actually one with Shane McElhenney's gone up for a header, and there was no attempt to play the ball, which easily could have been given as a penalty. But yeah, that certainly kind of, I guess, held back any sort of comeback that they were hoping to have on the night. But it was always going to be a tough one. James mentioned there about the rub of the green with the draw. This was quite a difficult draw. Riga have been strong in European competitions gone by, and particularly when you combine that, like Derry haven't been in great form of late. I think a Derry early on in the season would have given this a much better bash than the Derry that we've seen kind of pre the summer break. Like, they're leaking goals left, right and centre, and that's always a concern when you go up against better opposition, because they'll just punish you. And going two behind has given them a massive mountain to climb, and you would expect that they would probably concede again when they're out in Riga, and that would just be too much of a mountain to come back from. So listen, you just can't afford to give chances to that quality of opposition and expect to maybe stay in the tie. But it's been a funny one for Derry the last number of weeks. Like, they come back and they beat UCD, and I think they beat Bows and they got 6 points, and maybe you're looking at a bit of momentum coming back into their form. But pre the break, like, they were struggling to pick up a win, and that surprised us, because earlier on in the season we were probably talking about them pushing Shamrock Rovers after a great run of form that they've been on. A couple of injuries to key personnel certainly hasn't helped, but it's one where they just need to get back to basics and try to pick up, particularly in the league form. The European campaign is probably over now, but it's about consolidating, building on what it is that they've done to date, and then looking to maybe take another step up the ladder to actually bridging that gap to Shamrock Rovers. But yeah, the referee decision was funny. The game itself was probably a bit topsy-turvy. I can see James here itching to get in to talk about it.
Yeah, I was gonna go to you, James, because obviously, as Paula said, it's a tall order coming back in the second leg, and both goals that they conceded looked fairly soft. I mean, they were just attacks down the left, and then just balls turned in, and obviously scored from the end of it. But what's your view on that one?
Oh, my view. I haven't shouted at a linesman as much in my life since Anthony Butler was reffing. It has to be said. The first goal in particular, change done by a ball over the top. Striker runs onto it. Striker clips it back from a full 2 yards behind the end ball line. A full 2 yards. The striker actually stops. He hits it back and stops. That's how much. Even his body language told you it wasn't in. And then I looked below us because I was right in line with it. I looked below us to see linesman. Here comes the linesman's flag. The linesman is 10 yards behind the play. He's so far behind the play, it's not funny. And then with the sending off happens literally in front of me. And what it is, Matty wins the ball, knocks the ball off the defender, goes out for a throw in. As Matty runs past the defender shoves him in the back into the linesman. Matty turns, defender originally grabs him by the throat and then grabs him by the face. Matty does the one thing that every single player is always told: don't raise your hands. Raises his hand, hits him, but the linesman's directly behind Matty at this stage, so can't see what's happening in front of him. And everybody in the stand were giving out to Matty for doing what he did. But when the referee come over, we were fully expecting either 2 yellows or 2 reds. Not a yellow and a red. But that's what happens in European football. That's the rub of the green, as we said. But Riga then obviously attack from the next throw in, go play 2 or 3 balls, completely demolish Derry, 2-0 up. But anybody, even as a Derry fan, if you're looking at that game, I don't think Riga even got into second gear. I think their physicality, they're all really big, they're really fit, really quick. At some stages they were playing a front 4, and every single one of them were interchanging where they were going. So Derry defence didn't know who they were picking up at some stages, and they got away with a couple of chances where we think Riga are just going to push on here and absolutely bury them. And it just shows that even their touch on the pitch, like the pitch, for some bizarre reason or when they built the pitch, they didn't put a sprinkler system in. If you're building a brand new pitch, surely put a sprinkler system in. So it was a really warm night in Derry, probably the warmest night I've ever seen in Derry. And the ball was running slow or it was spinning oddly, but Riga got to it. And every time the ball hit them, first touch killed it dead, which gave them 5 or 6 seconds to look around for a pass. Whereas Derry, everything was frantic. And it was the age-old thing, if something's not working, just swap, do something different. But they never did. They just kept at the same way of trying to build up through the pitch, trying to go through the thirds on the pitch and stuff like that in the exact same way, and much slower than what Riga were doing. So at the end of the day, there may have been referees' decisions against Derry, but I fully expected Riga would have won it anyway. Yeah, and it's a tall order. I can't see Derry coming out of this on Thursday even in Riga with anything. If they get a draw, that would be wonderful for Derry because it does give coefficient points, but they're definitely not going through to the next round.
Yeah, and thanks for clarifying that first goal, because the camera angle I had, I couldn't tell if it had gone over or not. It was the way he kind of snapped it back. So anyway, at least it doesn't matter in the end now anyway. And the red card,
matter. They were a much better team, and it goes to show like they're just streets ahead. Like, and it was rubbing a green draw. It was probably the worst team for Derry to draw in that group.
Yeah, I suppose Matty Smith, he definitely would have got away with it had it been in the Armagh Galway game a few weeks ago, but the less said about that, the better. Anyway.
He might have got away with it, but Owen Toll would have been sent off as captain.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, domestically, obviously Derry City, Shamrock Rovers and Sligo Rovers not involved in the Premier Division action last Friday. So UCD lost 3-1 at home to Bohemians, so Bows back on track, and they needed, between this game and also playing Drogheda afterwards, they needed to get a victory and push themselves back into some sort of momentum. And then Dundalk, I think pretty much it ends any talk of a title shout, losing the loud derby to Drogheda United. Dean Williams scoring very early on and leaving Dundalk well off the pace. And then Shelbourne beating Finn Harps 3-1. We'll talk about Shels first. Let's listen to Damien Duff, who was speaking to Oisin Langan after that victory.
Thoroughly deserved to win. I guess you could maybe feel the nerves off the guys first 15-20 minutes. I think the goal settle them down maybe. I don't know whether they were thinking themselves that Finn Harps have a hoodoo over us. Obviously, there are only 2 wins this season were over us. But no, listen, they thoroughly deserve to win. Really good performance, really pleased with them. And just unfortunate that our game next week is called off, and it's back to, I guess, training and probably doing a mini pre-season again.
We'll get back to that in a second, but Gavin Malloy scored twice tonight. He only made his full debut, I think, last week. Jad Hakiki also played incredibly well. Young lads seem to be leading this, and they're doing it in a very creative way.
Yes, I've said it many times in the last 3-4 weeks. I don't play young lads just to say I've played a young lad or take pressure off myself or anything like that. Gav and Jad were probably the 2 standouts tonight, so you can see why they are playing. I thought they were magnificent along with the rest of the guys and the guys that came on. So yeah, they happen to be young players. I don't know whether it was a conscious thing last window at the start of the season. We obviously, it's well documented, we got rid of 15 guys, released them, and we got 15 in, and yeah, a lot of them happen to be young boys.
How frustrating, and you've already mentioned it, but how frustrating is it that you now have to wait for a couple of weeks having got a bit of momentum?
Listen, it is what it is. I obviously wanted to play the game. It's a catch-22 because you want to help teams in Europe as well and be fully prepared, so I get all that. It just means that we'll probably have to play 3 games in a week later on in the season. So listen, it's done. Maybe it'll be us one day, you never know, in a few years' time that we're in Europe and we're asking the team to be call off a game. But for now, it's just about getting points on the board.
And finally, tonight gives you a bit of a cushion, and I think it's fair to say that one of your aims was to stay up. Is the aim kind of changing now, given the form you're in and given the position you're in, to maybe try and get into Europe?
Like I said, it's seeds have maybe been planted at times in team meetings. It's all about dreaming, isn't it? Dare to dream. So could it happen? Yeah. There's points there to do it, but listen, again, I'm not getting carried away. It's just about staying up. So that's all I'm worried about.
All right, so that's Shelbourne manager Damien Duff speaking after the 3-1 win over Finn Harps. Obviously, Gavin Malloy took a lot of the plaudits with a couple of goals, and then obviously Moylan, who's been in pretty good form for them over the season, adding the third. But the discussion there that Oisin asked him about was in regards to the young players, and Damien Duff has been very proactive in terms of giving these players opportunities, and obviously that will lead to inconsistency. But Jad Hakiki was one player who's been, gaining plaudits. Paul, what have you made of him so far? He's made 9 appearances, and coincidentally 3 of them have been against Finn Harps this season, but he seemed to really impress against Harps.
Yeah, he has done. I think Damien Duff has done well of actually blooding these youngsters in and actually maybe drip feeding them minutes over kind of the period of the season and not just throwing them in the deep end early on. And Kiki's one of them who's kind of grown, particularly over the last number of months. The more minutes he's had, the more you kind of see him coming to the fore. Dangerous in the final third, and certainly has elements of his game that you can see are going to lend itself well to the way that they're looking to set up and play. Really important that Shels won that game against Finn Harps, particularly given the previous 2 fixtures that they've had against Harps and the points that they've dropped there. So, vitally important. I think naturally enough, Jack Moylan is another one who we kind of look at as a youngster that they've brought through and has done incredibly well. And what you're looking to do is maybe just keep building with those players. Give them the minutes, give them the kind of game time that's going to allow them to progress, and then you're hoping that when you start next season that you've got kind of more of an experienced squad to work with and play with. And Duffer's done that well. They're probably still maybe 2, 3, 4 bodies short of getting to that next level. I know Europe was mentioned within that interview. It's maybe a step too far for them right now. There are teams above them who are being terribly inconsistent, which could open the way for them. You would imagine it's probably a bit too much too soon. But yeah, listen, I think the players within there, the likes of Luke Byrne, the likes of Sean Boyd and Brendan Clark, who've been around the league, have been vitally important to them, particularly when they had that bit of an iffy start at the beginning of the season. But you can start to see the fundamentals of what Shels are trying to do coming through. The results have kind of come in tandem with that, and the home form has started to pick up. So a number of good signs there. If I was a Shels player and I heard mini pre-season in the middle of the interview, I'd say my ears would be ringing. A mini pre-season in July, halfway through the season. No, thank you.
Yeah, and then at the other end, the Louth derby, James, there's two sides to the coin here. Obviously, I think we have to recognise Drogheda United are having a very, very solid season when there was talk of them maybe being closer to Finn Harps and UCD. And then the other side of it, obviously, Dundalk, who've been defensively very resilient. You know, any talk of them really pushing Shamrock Rovers, they would have needed to win a game like this and, you know, keep the pressure on. But I think we can end any title talk now, I'd say.
I don't know about that. Like, they've still got a game in hand on Rovers. It only puts them, 7 points behind still to play them. I think we were talking titles are over and done with now. I think we're a bit premature. And their next game against St. Pat's is going to be massive. They're away at Richmond Park. If they can beat St. Pat's, then that puts a different spin on things. Derbies are always a cagey affair. Even if you look at their pre-season game that they have, I forget the Jack Malone Cup, maybe I forget what it's actually called, but they're always tense occasions. It does put a bit of a stopgap in how they were playing and how they were performing up until that. But that's the nature of this league. Everybody's capable of beating everybody else. The only problem I have for Drogheda is that, like, they've got 25 points now. At this stage, I think they had 25 points within 15 games last season. They got off to a really, really good start last year and then got dragged back down towards the relegation playoff kind of area, and they got away with it in the last couple of weeks. So you just hope for them that they can pick up on more points like this so as they're not dragged into that. But even at that stage, they're 8th in the table. They're 26 points behind the leaders. There's a massive gap between them, but there isn't that much of a gap between 6th and them. So there's still a possibility for them to pick up points, and off they go. They've got matches are coming up. We're talking about Shelbourne there. Shelbourne have 11 days before their next match. And then, of course, the week after that, we're off of league. We're into the FAI Cup. So maybe a couple of results before that will do Drogheda well. And then, like everybody, a bit of a cup run will help them as well. Because if you don't get a cup run this year, you've got weeks where you'll be without matches again. And Drogheda need matches the same way Shelbourne need matches. And if Shelbourne go out in the first round to Bray Wanderers as well, Damon Duff's going to be doing a lot more pre-seasons somewhere around September and October as well. But no, good result for Drogheda, poor result on reflection for Dundalk. But it depends on how Rovers do in Europe as well. That's the one caveat on this. Rovers keep going in Europe, anything can happen in the league then.
Yeah, I just want to clip it myself, and I told you so from somebody when Dundalk do lift the trophy at the end. And a quick word on Bohs, Paul, actually, because obviously they they had an early setback, but then obviously were able to kind of fight back and win 3-1 in the end.
Yeah, they were, and I think UCD is a game that you'd expect Bohs to go and win. Game management is probably something that people continue to go back to about Bohs. Going behind against UCD and being able to battle back is certainly something that will please Keith Long. Watch part of their game there in the weekend against Union Berlin. There was a good stream going on, so it's a good European game, yeah. There, I get death off Bohs fans, so I better not say too much. Yeah, it was a good chance to see some of their new players come in, though. I thought John O'Sullivan did quite well. Young Burke at left back looks a good player as well. Would have seen him when he was at Pats as an underage player. Looks like somebody who can maybe help them and help their back four, because they have looked leaky at different stages during the season. It looks like Dawson Devoy is gone. He didn't travel with the squad to Union Berlin as far as I know, so I wouldn't be surprised if he goes to MK Dons. That would be a huge loss. But for Bohs, it's just about consistency. They've failed to back up good results with kind of a run of good results, and they've seemed to have dropped points from winning positions, particularly against the likes of Derry, if I remember correctly. And if they can kind of fix that, you would fancy them to push for that top 3, top 4 position. But if they don't, it could be a frustrating end of the season for Bohs fans. But the win against UCD is one that you would expect, and it's about whether or not they can push on. Now, keep saying that the teams outside of Shamrock Rovers is kind of like a group of maybe 5 or 6 teams where inconsistency is just littered throughout all of them, and nobody seems to be able to go on a run of form. That leaves it wide open for Europe, and it will make an exciting end to the season. I disagree with James. I think the league is well and truly over. I think if you were to start the teams level on points now, I would still fancy Shamrock Rovers to win it. Dundalk, not there just yet, as far as I can see. And I think it leaves Shamrock Rovers in a nice position now to solely focus on European football.
Yeah, if Dundalk do win the league, I will clip out yourself. I'll clip out myself, and we'll just burn the footage and make sure it's never seen again. In the first division, though, Galway beat Cove Ramblers 3-0, so that's a big result for them on the way to playing Cork City next week, and then this Friday, Treaty United beating Longford Town 3-0. A big win for Wexford, 3-1 away to Waterford, and then Bray Wanderers winning 2-1 at Lone Town. Very quick word on these ones. Paul, I mean, Stephen Walsh scoring twice for Galway, and then obviously setting up what is, and also with the caveat that Cork City have a game in hand, but it's setting up a nice juicy game there on Friday now.
Yeah, it is, and it's kind of been nip and tuck between these two sides for a long period of time now, and the results against each other are probably going to be the ones that determine which way this league table finishes. Cork have done incredibly well with quite a young squad, and Galway have been on their right there with them the whole way throughout the season. So yeah, it sets it up perfectly. I mean, it'll be great if they were to continue with this kind of trajectory of the two teams just going at it now between now and the end of the season. And yeah, I mean, for either one that does get promoted, it's going to be a great addition to the Premier Division.
Yeah, and then finally in the Women's FAI Cup, there were a number of results there. Bohemians beating Galway 1-0 after extra time. DLR Waves beating Treaty United 5-0. Peamount beating Finglas 16-0. Cork City 7-0 against Bonaghy United. And then Whitehall Rangers losing 7-0 to Athlone Town, who are having a great season. And the quarterfinal draw is tomorrow. And I think that brings us to an end. Obviously, loads of coverage of the Women's Euro 2022 all across RTÉ for the rest of July. And the second leg of Shamrock Rovers against Hibernians of Malta is on the RTÉ News channel from 6:55 p.m. on Tuesday. So lots to tune in for. James O'Toole, thanks a mil for coming on this week, and Paul Corry, best of luck.
Thanks, guys.
Cheers, Raf.